I will show you how I applied this Got Flesh Prosaide transfer scratch to my thigh as part of my Little Red Riding Hood look. If you're using a Got Flesh prosthetic, they also come with these instructions in the pack. Prosaide transfers, like this Got Flesh one, are great because you can get really amazing edges with them. They're very soft and flexible, they last for ages on your skin as the whole thing is made from adhesive. You'll find Prosaide transfers being used in a lot of Hollywood movies because of these features. The one thing that got me the first time I used a Prosaide transfer is you cannot squish them as they don't bounce back like silicone, so keep that in mind. No squishing. You start by removing any powder from the surface of the Prosaide transfer with isopropyl alcohol, which I'll call IPA. I usually find that I have to stipple a thin layer of Prosaide after this step, but if you find that it's sticky enough, you can skip the extra Prosaide. Next, you place the transfer facing down onto the shiny side of the waterslide paper, which is the same thing that temporary tattoos are made from. You want to press against the paper to try to transfer all of the Prosaide across, so you focus on the edges, the detail of it all, but again, just don't push so hard so that it squishes. Don't ask me how I know this. Next, I hold it up to a light and I trace around where the 3 main claw marks are to make it easier to apply it, as you're only going to be seeing the back of the waterslide paper when you apply it. Cut off the excess paper, getting it as close to the edges of the Prosaide transfer without cutting into the edges. Next, you remove the clear acetate paper layer. I find that having a brush dipped in 99% IPA is really helpful if you have any bit of Prosaide sticking to the acetate paper as you're trying to peel it away. So you can use that brush to unstick any of the Prosaide from the acetate and press it back down onto the waterslide paper. Take your time with this step as it will immensely improve your application time if you do it right. Now you place it where you want to apply it on the skin, Prosaide side down. Press it against the skin, then apply a dampened paper towel, cloth, or powder puff that is wet enough to soak the paper but not so wet that it drips. The waterslide paper will start to slide off when it's ready, just like a temporary tattoo. Now, I'm not the best at applying it, I need some more practice, so I will need to work a little bit to blend out the edges. As it's all Prosaide, 99% IPA will blend this out, so as long as you keep working on it, you can get really nice edges. You can use a brush to do this, but I prefer using cotton tips and rolling them outwards away from the transfer. This part is the longest part of the application for me. To finish, I stipple a layer of Prosaide over it all, which helps to blend out and seal the edges. To colour it, I'm going to use Skin Illustrator palettes. I start with a pink from the Complexions palette called Light Mauve, and I stipple it over the entire transfer. Then I will stipple Natural 2 over everything to get it a bit closer to my skin tone. Then I'll stipple a little bit of Olive Adjuster as my skin has some green undertones. And then I thought it also needed to bring in some blue undertones, so I splattered on a light layer of Vein Blue with a cut-off chip brush. I also splattered over some rice paper, which is the lightest flesh tone in the palette, which is what I normally am. It still wasn't looking right, so first I tried to blend out the edges of the splatter pattern with a clean brush dampened with IPA, and then it dawned on me that my legs have gotten a little bit darker with summer coming in here, so I added a mix of the 2 medium dark colors from the Fleshtones palette, and then I splattered that lightly over it all, and that helped to blend it into my skin. Then I powdered it to take away some of the stickiness. Next, I went in with light mauve again, and this time I'm applying it lightly around the edges of the claw mark to try and simulate some irritation, and I also darkened this pinkness or redness slightly with a light layer of Dusty Rose. I used a clean brush and some IPA to blend out those pink colours a bit more, so there's no harsh edges. Then I started applying the colour inside the scratch marks. So I started with Dusty Rose and then added some dark mauve sparingly so that the Dusty Rose colour could still show through in some parts. Then I did the same thing with Red Rum, which is a dark bloody red colour, trying not to cover up all of the pinks we just applied, but instead applying it only in certain parts of the wound. I thought I put a bit too much Red Rum down, so I used a cotton tip dampened with IPA to take back some of the colour. Basically, you don't want it to just be red, you want it to have little bits of muscle pinks and reds and different colours coming through. I sprayed a sealer over it all. I used Nye Final Seal, and then I thought it looked a little bit too shiny, so I added a little bit more setting powder over just the skin areas, avoiding inside the wound. Then to add the blood, I stood up, hoping that it would run a bit more authentically, and I used a dropper bottle with some Mold Life Kensington Gore aged blood inside, and I dripped this along both sides of the stretches, letting it run a little. Then I used a brush to put more blood inside the wounds, and I went in with a dampened paper towel and a dampened cotton tip to remove any excess blood and make it appear a bit messier and less placed on. So the Mold Life blood has an orange tint to it, and when wiped away it can leave that behind, so I wanted to amp up more of the blue-based pink redness around the wound to try to counteract some of that orangeness that the blood left. So I carefully added some more Dusty Rose, which is that bluey pinkish colour, along the edges of the claw marks where there wasn't much blood. And that's how I apply my Prosaide transfers. Now, to remove them can be difficult as they are all Prosaide, so using something that dissolves adhesive will just leave you with a big gummy mess. What you want to use for Prosaide transfers is a remover called DC244 or 245, which is a silicone fluid that will get underneath your Prosaide transfer, separating it from your skin without dissolving any of the Prosaide, and that way you can get it off very cleanly and then go in with something afterwards to remove any leftover Prosaide residue on your skin. For that part, I like to use Isopropyl Myristate as it's quite gentle. It takes a little while to get it off, so you have to be patient, but it is nicer for your skin. The other option is using something a little bit stronger. I do like Solv myself, which will cut down the time for removing the residue, but it can be a little bit harsher on your skin. There is also a product called Solv Plus, which is a sensitive skin version of this. Once you've gotten off all of the Prosaide residue from your skin, you can use something to get rid of that oilier residue from the removers, so something like a wet wipe works well. If you find any Prosaide residue on you the next day, which does happen, just get a little bit more remover on it. Thanks for watching. Here is the video for the rest of the Little Red Riding Hood look, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, there is a link for that here too.